Did I what?
Fire the clerks.
I clicked on both.
Conferencing. Skimming. Hey, is it 14?
We're good. I'm waiting for feeling the spotlight this, so.
But we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, let's go live. So with that, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is March 14th, also known as Pi 2023. And at 6 o'clock, we're down here at the mill. This is going to be a Lake Stevens City Council meeting. And we are both, we're hybrid, both live down here and as well as online. And this meeting is being recorded and will be later published on our YouTube channel. So with that, I would ask all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Why?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Was that?
And I think that tonight we are honored by having permit lead Cody step in for our clerks who are away at a conference. So if you could give us a roll call, that'd be great, Cody.
Mayor Gailey, this is Deputy Clerk Weaver. I'm going to do the roll call for Cody.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Council President Jorstad,
Present.
Councilmember Daughtry,
Present.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Present.
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Present.
Councilmember Ewing,
Here.
Councilmember Tadgen.
Present.
Wonderful.
All right, great. We got everybody here. So Council President, could we get an approval of the agenda, please?
Sure, everyone has an agenda in front of them. Any comments or a motion?
I do have questions about the minutes from the retreat. So I'm just wondering, it didn't have any dates for any of the activities that were specified, and I don't know if there's additional reports coming out when there's timelines attached to each action item, but if there's not going to be one, I would suggest that be removed from the agenda until we have specific dates by which each of the tasks that were determined at the retreat will be accomplished and by whom.
My recollection, please correct me if it's not accurate, is that we are approving the minutes this evening, but that there is a more detailed list of notes coming from the, I'm totally blanking on her name, the person who facilitated the agenda.
Mhm.
Will that provide more detail?
So I guess, what do you want dates for?
Just
Each task should have a date by which it's to be accomplished and by whom. Because what I've seen in the past is we have these retreats, we have these ideas that we're going to do, and there's no dates attached to them. And it seems to be more effective when there's targets by which those things are going to be accomplished.
So Councilmember Ewan, you're asking, just for instance, like the review of the council procedures, get it done by, say, June 1st or something.
Whatever date is.
Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because without which it doesn't make sense for us to say, hey, we want to do these things in 2023 when we don't have targets and we're already at the middle of March.
Okay, so does that require meeting the entire council to go through those tasks and dating them?
I think that's what the city staff, I think, is the one that's going to determine the ability to accomplish those and when.
Mayor Gailey, if I can.
But Gene?
This will be going on the tracking spreadsheet that does have who it's assigned to. So I'll get that put together in the next week or so and bring that back, but it shouldn't affect the the minutes this evening. The minutes are the minutes of the meeting, but I could certainly put the add a timeline to that task tracker. We haven't done that in the past, but I'm happy to do so.
Any other questions or comments or motions?
Well, I would, for one, agree with Councilmember Ewing on some dates so that we have some proactive and accountability actions. I guess I would kind of follow the city administrator's advice that maybe he come back with that spreadsheet at a later date and go ahead and approve these minutes. These are kind of overview minutes. They're not very detailed. So I would suggest that we go ahead and approve this as is with the proviso that we're having some information come back from staff as to the retreat details, I guess.
So we'll have that, that he sounds like by the next meeting, we'll have some more detail on that.
Yeah.
That works.
Me too. All right, we have a motion.
I move to approve the council meeting agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. You have an agenda.
Great, appreciate it. Thank you very much, Council. All right, let's go to the next one, which is an activity that I really enjoy doing, and that's swearing in a new police officer. And I think Dean Thomas, you've got the floor.
Great, called in, the bullpen.
Jeff, you want to come on up? On behalf of Chief Bezzo, it is our pleasure to introduce Jess Brecht as our newest lateral hire. After a 13-year career with the U.S. Coast Guard, Officer Brecht began his law enforcement career in 2005 with the City of Renton Police Department. In 2006, Officer Brecht laterally transferred to the City of Mukilteo Police Department, where he was a motor traffic officer, the department administrative coordinator, and an FTO. In 2017, Officer Brecht became a special agent with Railroad Police, where he investigated organized cargo theft and human trafficking, as well as other assigned cases. In 2019, Officer Brecht returned to municipal law enforcement and he lateraled to the City of Lake Forest Park Police Department. While at Lake Forest Park, Officer Brecht was assigned to patrol. He became a patrol rifles and handgun instructor. Officer Brecht was also officer in charge in the absence of a sergeant. Officer Brecht came to Lake Stevens Police Department in March, and he is excited for this opportunity. I guess I'm talking for him here. Officer Brecht is married to retired police officer Catherine Brecht, and they have two children, Dane, age 9, and Roan, age 5. When he's not working at the police department, Officer Brecht and his family enjoy working on their small family farm in Machias. Mayor?
Great.
Yeah.
We've been in badges and stuff. You got that in part?
I wasn't given
You weren't given anything.
anything.
I don't think I remember the. Yeah.
Let me do some digging.
Dig real quick in the meantime.
Got it.
So, so Jess is good friends with my executive officer for my Army Reserve unit. I did not know he was going to be here today. And but we went, so it's very needed, but.
Big son was the ring bearer at a
Oh.
Small.
We're glad to have you here. We don't have the words.
We want to look a little bit different.
You know, we, it's in the meeting, so we can get the words and I want to shoot them. Okay. Sam and I will come on, take on it.
Does Caitlin have them? Do we know? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll work on that right now, Mayor. I'm gonna grab that.
Okay, so with that, let's move to citizens' comments real quick. And we provide opportunities for both those in person and online to provide citizens comments. If you're in person, if you could fill out a green sheet, I've got 2 so far. If you're online, we ask you to raise your digital hand and we acknowledge you for 3 minutes to speak with the council. So with that, is there anyone online who wishes to provide citizens comments tonight? Caitlin, do you have anybody?
I don't see anyone in the waiting room with their hand up, so no citizen comments from the Zoom environment.
Okay, great. So we'll go with those that are in person, and I have green sheets from, let's start with Jack Johnson. Jack, if you want to hit the podium, tell us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to address the council.
All right. Good. Okay. I am Jack Johnson. I live at 9795 15th Street Southeast. I'm here representing the Lake Stevens Youth Advisory Council. And we would like to, well, the council will remember that a few weeks ago, a private organization called Creator Zone came and presented to the council on a facility that they're building over by Frontier Village. And we would like to encourage the council to help fund this facility in whatever way they can. This facility is youth-centered in teaching skills and giving opportunities to learn different technological skills that can help you vocationally and creatively in the lives of teens and in young adults. And we believe that that could be a great asset to the youth of Lake Stevens. So we'd like to encourage you to help fund that in whatever way you can. That's all I have to say.
Great. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. And then Antoinette from the library.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antoinette Morales Tanner. I'm the manager of the Lake Stevens Library located at 2211 Great Road. I'm here tonight to share some exciting news with you all about the building project for the new Lake Stevens Library. Starting March 20th, so next Monday, construction crews will begin work to clear the site at the Chapel Hill property. North End Excavating was hired for this work, and clearing should be completed in 7 to 10 days. During this time, the 2 houses and outbuildings will be cleared, all concrete and asphalt will be removed, and the septic tank on the north end of the property will be removed as well. The 2 large glacial erratic boulders will stay on the site. They're too heavy to move. No, just kidding. They're going to stay on the site, and they're going to be featured in the design for the outdoor space of the new library. So we're really excited about seeing that as well. There should be minimal disturbance to the surrounding community while crews work on the site, and we are really committed to being a good neighbor. To that end, we will have contact flyers and signs up on the property before work begins next Monday. The signs have QR codes on them. The contact information is there, and folks can let us know if there's anything going on that was unexpected. We don't expect it. You may have also noticed on the site earlier this month, Snohomish Regional Fire used the site to complete rescue training from February 7th to February 13th. They did training called venting, where they cut holes in the roof and practiced on unique building structures. We were really honored to be a partner in this important community safety opportunity. So while work on the site clearing process has been underway, we've also begun the wetlands mitigation process, planning for underground infrastructure, and landscape and site design. So those things are happening concurrently. Building work, the architecture firm that we've hired for this project is in the final stages of the site design process, and we will be sharing that information with you in the coming weeks. We're also looking forward to celebrating these future milestones with you. The first step of clearing the site will allow us to host groundbreaking and other events on the property and share each phase of this exciting work with the community. Thank you so much for your continued support of a new permanent library building in Lake Stevens. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we're doing the clearing, so when do we expect to have the new library?
That is a very difficult timeline to put in stone. So many things happen. The timeline that I currently have that we are working with is end of 2024, beginning of 2025. Obviously, many things go into that, supply chain issues. We find any number of things on the site, things that could delay that process. but that's the timeline that we're working with right now.
No,
Okay.
appreciate it though, Ray.
I'll be here. if you want.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from council?
No.
Okay.
Thanks, Antoinette. All right, great. Let's move on to, let's knock out council business while we're here. Council President.
Thank you. Why don't we go and start at the end? We'll move this way. Council Member Cadgett.
Just a couple weeks, nothing for me to report.
Thank you.
Nothing for me.
Thank you. Councilman Dickinson.
Yes, well, of course, I was at the senior board meeting yesterday, and I'm thrilled to see how hard they're working to make themselves a success. And what's going to happen next, we don't know, but they have this new thing where they do a meal and a movie, where everybody comes in and watches a movie and has a meal together. And they are just doing a fabulous job. They're working their little tails off. I know that, but they're doing a great job. I'm very proud of them. So rock on. That's all I got to go to.
Thank you. Councilmember Donahue.
Yes, I'll just say it. So on the first, I attended the planning commission meeting. We had a great presentation from Cascadia regarding the climate mitigation plan. I believe we're going to see that tonight. And then there was also another presentation regarding proposals for the industrial center by McKinsey. And both of these have actually been summarized quite well. I believe it's on page 48 of our packet. So if anyone's interested, there's more information there.
Thank you. Councilman Peter Sagan.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilman Daughtry.
I attended the Community Transit Board of Directors meeting where we were talking about the gold line going up through I-5 and Marysville to get up to the areas up in up in Arlington. Also discussing and trying to get Highway 9 fixed so we can also have a commuter bus going from here in Lake Stevens all the way up to Arlington. And that would be just get on the bus and go instead of stopping everywhere that they could possibly stop. So that discussion is ongoing. And we had a good debrief on what's going on at the state legislature for the transportation funding. And that's about it.
Great, thank you. Just really quickly, I wanted to let the council know that I think I mentioned last year as the Snohomish Health District became the Snohomish Health Department within the county. The district maintained an executive committee that would continue to meet if matters arose that needed to help in the business of winding down district activities. So we had the executive committee had a meeting on March 1st, primarily to execute a common interest agreement between the executive committee and the county to share information, to spell out how information could be shared that needs to be shared in order to wind up the business of the district. And so we had a pretty brief meeting. We approved vouchers that occurred towards the end of 2022. We anticipate there may be 1 or 2 additional meetings, and as those happen, I'll make sure and bring that information back to council. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, part of mayor's business. Let's try this just swearing in thing again. I think we're better prepared. I'm good. Why don't you come over here so the folks on the TV can see a little better, see the family, that's what it's all about. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So with that, is right hand. I just Brett.
I just Brett.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
the ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
the ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
and the mission and regulations
and the mission and regulations
of the Lake Stevens Police Department,
of the Lake Stevens Police Department,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
perform and discharge the duties
perform and discharge the duties
of a Lake Stevens police officer
of the Lake Stevens police officer
according to law and to the best of my ability.
according to law and the best of my ability.
Yeah.
So loud. Board.
Thanks for bringing.
Congratulations, welcome.
Right. All right, it's good to work. It's always fun to do that. I would, as you know, I always enjoy seeing the families here and getting to know them. That's what this city's all about, is our great families and friends, so. Having said that, last week I spent quite a bit of time in Olympia. Helping to push along a couple of public safety bills, pursuit policy, as well as making sure that Blake's going to be successful. We shall see how the legislature ends up on that, as well as we did some work with making sure that we are keeping on the forefront of our legislators, our capital ask with Cedarwood, as well as South Lake Stevens and South Lake Stevens Trail. So things. So with that, we've got a written city report on you. Is that correct? That's you, sir. And can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda, please?
Second.
You have a motion and a second passage consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Did the council get to see the design for the, it's on there. The design for the entrance sign at the Costco roundabout? Oh, it looks great. Looks great. I don't know if we can maybe find it somewhere. I'll pull it up. It looks really good, though.
We just have the design. We don't have a sign yet.
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah, that's for the main street.
Okay.
There's actually a really neat design out there that they're going with on the sign for the entrance. Looks really cool. It's a little boat with Pilchuck behind it. Looks great.
It's got the mountain behind it.
Yeah, it's doesn't look like that. It's got the sailboat. It's got a sail with a sailboat and it's got like Pilchuck behind it. And it's big, so you can see it. Yeah.
Yes, it comes from our beautification plan with some slight modifications to fit the space. Since it's not on a pedestal, it's on a wall. We just had a lot of negative space, so we worked to incorporate that other image with Pilchuck, which is similar to some of our district icons. So it's definitely out of our beautification plan.
Yeah, it looks really good. It's better than the gray wall with the garage sale this way sign that pops up on it.
Yes, true.
So- All right, let's go to Melissa with our climate mitigation plan, draft strategies and actions.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Melissa Place, Senior Planner with the city. For your consideration this evening is a draft list of strategies and actions for the city's first climate mitigation plan. With the concert and help with our consultants and staff review and outside agency review, this draft list is attached to your staff report as attachment 1. These strategies and actions are basically the substance of the plan and help define the plan. So we're looking for your input and feedback tonight. We do have the city's consultant here to do a presentation and guide you through the background on the CMP and also on these draft strategies and actions. I want to point out some opportunities for public input that are coming up. Next Tuesday evening, we'll have a public workshop that'll be hosted online for public input. And then next Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to have focus group interviews and discussions. And then just this past Sunday, we had a community-wide survey that was launched online. And that online link is on our city webpage at the Climate Mitigation Plan site. And so I'd love the community or any members that aren't able to attend some of these meetings to go ahead and try to give the input through that survey. That would be much appreciated. Gretchen Muller is here with Cascadia Consulting Group. And so I'll turn this over to her to give the presentation, and they're both here to help answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
It's shorter. Was this or should I turn? Mark, somebody was a little shorter. Thank you. Perfect. Great.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I know we have a PowerPoint that's going to be coming up here in just a moment as well. And so the thought here is just to walk through just a few slides to orient everybody to the climate mitigation plan. What are the key elements of it? What is work that we've done so far? What is work that we're doing moving forward? And where are we at in process with that, with what's in your packet, which is those draft strategies and actions, but really leaving most of the time to hear from you all in terms of initial reactions and thoughts, reflections on those set of draft strategies and actions. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead, and I know we've got a couple of screens here, and so I'll just be walking through just a few slides before opening it up for hearing your all's input. And first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. My name is Gretchen Muller, and I'm a director of our planning and facilitation line of business at Cascadia Consulting Group. And we are a consulting firm that's based out of the Seattle area, and really excited that we're getting to work with Melissa and her team on this effort, and excited to be here tonight. So thank you so much for having me. All right, so we'll go ahead and launch in here. We can go to the next slide, please. So the three main elements that I'll be covering, as I mentioned, that climate mitigation plan overview. So just walking through the different tasks that our team is tackling. Then diving into the strategies and action development and the process associated with that. How did we get here? How did we get to this list of draft strategies and actions? And then wrapping up with next steps and responding to any and all questions that you all have, both related to the process as well as the draft strategies and actions. Go to the next slide. Great. Next slide, please. Excellent. So this slide here really lists the three main overarching goals of this plan. That first one being to identify strategies and actions for meeting your climate and equity goals. That's that first circle. The second circle is to ensure that this plan aligns with state and regional greenhouse gas reduction goals. There are state level goals, there are regional goals, and so making sure that this aligns with those. And then the third is really to get you all set up and in a position to incorporate climate policy into your 2024 comp plan update. And that's a really exciting evolution, actually, that many of your neighboring jurisdictions are also embarking on that piece as well. So making sure that this plan talks to the comp plan, talks to other plans that your city is undergoing. Go to the next slide. Excellent. So this really is that roadmap. So what are all the various pieces that my team is working on as it relates to your climate mitigation plan? And that first task, the very first thing that we did right out of the gates was developing a community engagement plan. What are all of the engagement touch points? And I know Melissa just walked through many of them. This second task, which we completed in February, but obviously is ongoing. We've got a draft set of strategies and actions, lots of steps to finalize those. But as Melissa mentioned, those are really the core piece of your climate mitigation plan. And that task 3, so those strategies and actions will go through an equity assessment filter, basically to see how they score in terms of equity and how aligned are we there? Are there any adjustments we want to make to those actions as it relates to that equity assessment? And then task 4 is conducting a cost benefit analysis of the measures of a subset of the measures, the ones that really rise to the top. And then all of this falls into or folds into the draft plan, and looking to finalize that plan by June 2023. And just a couple of things to note that this effort it's an ambitious effort, and we have grant funding, or Melissa and her team were able to secure funding to do this work. And so we are on this accelerated timeline. So we're doing a lot of the work that we're doing is happening in a time frame that often happens in a year, in 18 months. And so we're doing all the things, but doing them in a condensed timeline. So that's what you're seeing here. Any questions on either the goals or the timeline before I keep going forward?
Yeah, just
Yes.
quick question on your time frame here.
Yes.
Cost benefit analysis, April of 23. You're going to have that done?
It's high level. So it's potentially different than some of the other cost benefit analyses that you've done. It's really kind of cost estimates in ranges and isn't a full blown evaluation of costs.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have an example of a previous cost benefit analysis that's been done? Can you take a look at?
Not tonight, but can definitely share that with Melissa and get that over to you all. Yeah.
Got a comment here because and I'm not going to say I'm against this, but at the same time, we, as a state, we intend to enact things like our new energy code, which says there was a cost benefit analysis done, really. And yet it does nothing but penalize homeowners significantly as far as costs. And as I read through this stuff here, that everything, there's a cost associated with all this stuff. And so I guess it, where does it lead us to? The biggest impact that we have here is cars. We don't have any control over the cars here. So instead we're talking about, energy sources for homes and things of that sort. And yet the new energy code amplifies the cost for energy big time. And then we talk about affordable housing. There's such a disconnect. It's just absolutely amazing. So I guess I'm kind of leery, I guess, of the city taking this on. I realize it's a grant and things of that sort, but grants are free money, right?
Right.
Well, it's also a requirement. We have to put it in a comprehensive plan. However, I agree with you. And I can't believe you did affordable housing and the other in the same breath. What is up?
You
what's up?
can't. You can't. So I guess I get, the end of the day, what are we trying to accomplish here? We put it in our comprehensive plan. We all feel good about it, yet it's impacted our community dollar-wise, fiscally, rather immensely. And so I'm looking forward to that cost benefit analysis. And if it's at a high level, is that worth anything? If we're just kind of throwing numbers out there.
Right. Yeah. And I wouldn't say our approach is throwing numbers out there. So we definitely have a methodology around it, but it's going to be a higher level, just based on budget available for this. It's a first step in a multi-step process. And I would definitely say that with the strategies and actions as well. So figuring out, prioritizing the near-term actions that you all want to move forward versus longer-term actions versus ones that you'd like to flag for additional analysis. And I don't know if Melissa, if you want to weigh in more on this piece. I guess the only other piece I would add is, there are that it is a requirement, right? So moving forward in terms of comprehensive planning, a climate element is going to be a requirement moving forward, isn't quite yet. So in that piece, that task that Lake Stevens is moving towards as part of this effort is, you're one of several jurisdictions that are doing this, but it's kind of on the earlier side. Climate action plans, our jurisdictions around the region have been working on these for many, many years. So, yeah.
Thanks.
So maybe I can add a couple of comments, Councilmember Peter Shagan. So one, as we've talked about, this does become a mandatory element. Right now, it is optional, but we can, Department of Commerce has provided that funding. So we wanted to prepare ourselves for a future date when it does become mandatory and help guide some of our decision-making. From the get-go, as we've worked with our consultant, we've definitely discussed and internally with the different departments, externally with our stakeholders, one of the main conversations has been, we want actionable goals, something that we can do that there is a direct correlation and effect. And so not at this meeting, this is just sort of the introduction of, here are a variety of goals they've gone through and actions that have gone through a couple of filters, one being our partner agencies, one internal staff review, and then the Planning Commission. This is the council's opportunity at the next meeting when we come to you, really gets to your question, where does Lake Stevens want to be in this? Do you want to be at the front of the pack? Do you want to be at the back of the pack? Do you want to be somewhere in the middle? So this is really just this introduction tonight of, here's a variety of actions, deliverables that other communities have considered, and they range from things like recycling, composting, on that end, to what you've discussed tonight, which is how are we using energy, which we don't have control over, our transit. And so we've already taken a look at these and said, well, some of these, the city of Lake Stevens We can partner with other agencies, you know, as far as education or common goals, but we recognize from the get-go, we're not in the driver's seat on a lot of these. So as we work through this, just keep that in mind, that at least from the staff's perspective, as we've worked with our consultant, is we want ground truth actions that can take effect. And then again, as you look at the analysis, the cost benefit, and the cost benefit will be more than just immediate financial dollars. It might be long-term, you know, financial costs. We just want that to be part of the conversation. And again, when we bring this back to you after you get to sort of react to these initial goals and policies, then you can really help determine what the flavor is when we set a mission and value statement around our objectives in the climate change, and then how we integrate that into our comprehensive plan.
I appreciate that, Russ, very much. That's, I can live with that. Thank you.
Does this lead us down the road? Like, say, if we're gonna get into more composting and recycling, so then when we go to renew our contract with Waste Management, as part of our plan, is we say, hey, this is part of our plan. So then we implement that, and then we deal with the cost of doing that when Waste Management, we renew a contract. Would that be correct?
Yes, that would set the goals for the city and then what we would expect of partners in the future.
When we were down in Olympia a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, I lose track of time. It's a great thing. I asked a question to somebody that was supposed, we were talking about this down there, the cost benefit of doing this in our plan. And the question I ask is, what are the metrics for the benefits? And I've never gotten a good answer for that. So, you know, we talk about greenhouse gases. I mean, that's up there. That's one of the benefits of climate change and, you know, doing all this stuff, but nobody can give me an answer of what the benefit really is and how we're going to measure that. We're having the same discussion at Community Transit, where we're trying to go with either hydrogen buses or all electric buses and things like that, you know, at a cost of $1.2 million a bus. And they cannot give us any kind of an indication of how that's going to save us any money in the climate change arena. That's actually costing us a grunge of money, $1.2 million per bus, and about $18 million just to make a charging station. So I'm having a real hard time, as Gary is saying here, with this cost benefit analysis stuff. When we can talk about costs, that's great, but nobody can tell me what the benefit metrics are. And I'm really going to be looking forward to hearing that.
Well, one thing I do want to add, so oftentimes I'm a little bit in some ways surprised to hear that, because we definitely there's a lot of data out there that does show emissions benefits, and you know, with a lot of the actions that are listed here that, you know, that we've pulled from other places and other plans. Both plans within the city of Lake Stevens, as well as like jurisdictions or neighboring jurisdictions. So in terms of carbon emissions, there is a large book of work, and that tells that story, right? Like in terms of transportation, in terms of, you know, energy, buildings, and we've got several different focus areas as part that I'll get into in just a couple of slides here. And that is the way that the strategies and actions are organized. So we do have kind of that story to tell. This particular, what Lake Stevens is undertaking here with this climate mitigation plan, a wedge analysis is not part of it. But we've talked to Melissa, and potentially there would be an interest, you know, whether it's working with us or working with whomever, to tell that story, but to tell that emissions story, just like you talked about, right? So what are the benefits in terms of emissions as it relates to the emitters, and where do we need to focus our strategies and actions related to that greenhouse gas inventory story?
I just think we have to be careful when we're adopting it for unintended consequences. Say we say, hey, we're gonna reduce landfill. Next thing you know, our waste bill goes up to $50 a month because have unintended consequences, because according to this plan, we try to hit these targets. Waste Management say, you want to hit these targets, here's the bill on a monthly deal for that. So we have to think about that when we're adopting a plan. And like you said, the benefit for the community members as well.
I know we've totally upended your presentation. I
problem.
appreciate it. I appreciate.
These are great
allowing us to
questions.
Do so.
Yeah,
You
great
know,
question.
one of the things I don't see in the strategies and actions here is capacity.
Mhm.
I see a lot of discussion about moving away from fossil fuels and cleaner fuels, meaning electricity. So I think part of that cost benefit analysis and part of that strategy and that action needs to be, okay, let's say, you know, we hit the Dreamland, Lake Stevens is all electric, but there's no capacity for that. And so what you really have to do, part of this plan, I think, is also plan outside and say, how do you increase the capacities to reach those goals? And this state's nowhere near on that track, nor is our country, right? But we have these lofty goals of no gas combustion engines by 2035. Well, that's a great goal, but you don't have the electrical capacity to charge the cars. So I think that part of your strategies and actions for the city has to be, how does Lake Stevens get the capacity to reach these goals?
And can you share a little bit more what you mean by capacity? Do you mean like staff capacity and ability to?
Actually electrical current.
Oh, right. The infrastructure of the grid, the electrical grid, right?
Right. I mean,
Right.
do you put more dams up? Do you put more, because I'll tell you, the windmills and the solar panels aren't gonna pay for you, time the capacity there. Do you do mini nukes, mini nuclear grids around the state, which is I'm a fan of. I don't think we call them nukes anymore.
We don't call them nukes.
We call them something else.
I call them nukes.
I call them nukes, but green energy, non-nuke things, right? So, well, what's your capacity, right? Like you can make all these lofty goals, but if you don't have the capacity of the actual energy, they're fruitless.
Right. And at different levels, the state is working on that right now. The state is working on a transportation electrification strategy as we speak. And part of that will be what grid capacity needs to be elevated. So yeah, the many things need to happen all at once for us to move in that direction. Yeah.
Not to prolong the conversation, but there's two things. I looked at this through a really different lens. So I was actually pleased to see the number of things that were on the list that weren't a big cost to the city. A lot of the information around developing education and community engagement and community awareness around the little things that we can do that as a community that can make a difference. And I think it's important to remember that one of the reasons this is being required is because we've spent the last 20, 25, 30 years not paying attention. And in terms of cost benefit analysis, we're living in the midst of some of the costs of not doing this work. So I just have a different perspective, and I appreciate that there's both, things that we need to look at investing money in, but also things we can do as a community just to increase education and awareness. And I look forward, I realize this is like the first step and we're just kind of seeing the big menu. I look forward to really talking more about what we can do as a community.
Councilmember Jorstad, I've got to argue with you a little bit because the state has done a great job of implementing new electrical codes and new codes over the last 20, 25, 30 years. Every 3 years, they're adopted, every 4 years. And every year it's ratcheted up. So we are on the forefront of energy efficiency in households and buildings. This building right here is energy efficient. So to say we haven't done anything, I don't think that's an accurate statement. As to what it will cost the city, you're exactly right. It won't cost the city much, but it'll cost taxpayers a lot of money. The individual homeowners and people that populate this city will be impacted cost-wise by these regulations. So when you say the city isn't impacted, I don't think that's an accurate statement. The citizens are impacted.
I would like, can I speak for a minute? Yeah, I just want to say, when I saw a climate mitigation plan in my packet, I was thrilled because when we talk about kids, they're the ones we're doing this for. It could cost money for sure, and I don't want to put anybody in dire straits, but I love the idea of educating the community and letting the kids know, this is serious stuff. And we do need to do something. And we can't just look the other way and pretend nothing's happening, because you don't have to look far to see that a lot is happening right now. So I want to thank both of you, Ms. Place, and you as well for your hard work. Rock on, okay?
All right,
Should I keep going?
let's,
Good questions, good discussion. Okay, I will keep going here. So we can skip, this is now kind of walking into the strategies and actions development and the associated process. And as just a first step, wanting to share with you all, this is really kind of the scaffolding within which the plan will be developed. So that overarching mitigation plan vision, as well as greenhouse gas emissions reduction target. And we're in conversations right now with Melissa and their team to talk through what might be some of the next steps related to setting an emissions reduction target and whether or not you all would like to adopt it. So more to come on that. You'll see that the way that the strategies and actions in your plan are organized is by focus area. And I'll share a little bit more about what those focus areas are. Underneath each of the focus areas are the targets and metrics, associated strategies and actions with each of the focus areas. And so this next slide here has the 5 main focus areas and the actions within each of these buckets. So buildings and energy, transportation, waste and materials management, water and natural systems, as well as community resilience and well-being. And your packet is organized accordingly. So we can go ahead to the next slide, please. Yeah, so then how all these came to you all and what they really comprise of is they reduce greenhouse gas emissions and or enhance climate resilience, align with local and state plans and guidance. So definitely pulled forward actions, some of the actions that are already happening, right? That are based on existing policies that are in existing plans and pulled from those where possible. And you'll see some of the different places that we went for those. And then drawing from regional plans as well as best practices. So what are neighbor jurisdictions, that have developed climate action plans already? What are some of the actions that we know have the greatest impact in terms of climate mitigation, as well as, which ones kind of score highest in that space? And then also which actions that we know of really offer co-benefits. So not just benefits from, that really kind of run across benefits and such as improved health, those types of things. So we've got a definition for what co-benefits are and kind of how they align with that list of strategies and actions. And then we can go to the next slide. So these are the various steps. So the first step that we took was really, the step 1, drafting the list of strategies and actions, the city taking a look at them, providing feedback on that draft list, then revising it based on city feedback. And Melissa, feel free to jump in here. Melissa's been living and breathing this review process, so feel free to jump in here at any time. We're in this step 2 column, so conducting that equity assessment as well as soliciting feedback from the community. So that's the column we're in right now. And then what we'll do once we get that feedback, and we're here tonight for some of this additional feedback, we'll have other touch points with you along the way as well. And then finalizing that list of strategies and actions, incorporating that equity assessment, incorporating the feedback that we're hearing from the community. Anything more, Melissa, that I missed on that process piece?
I don't have too much more. I just wanted to reiterate what Director Wright said, which is when we got the draft list, we did provide it internally to staff and department heads. Department heads took a crack at it. We tried to refine it. We worked with partnering agencies. So when I say different agencies, water, sewer, electric, the school district, community transit, waste management all had a crack at it as well. And so we've been working on refining that and to get you the list that you have in your staff report this evening.
Great. Yeah. We have a couple more slides. This shows the strategies. It doesn't have the actions, and I know you all have the actions in front of you. So I don't know how much time we want to spend on these next 3 slides before heading to next steps. Do you want me to walk through these, Melissa, or should we head straight to next steps?
We can go to next steps just
Okay.
in the interest of time, if that's okay with you.
Great. Let's go ahead and do that.
Can I ask a silly question?
How do we as a community address air travel emissions?
That is not a silly question. That question comes up every single meeting that we have.
Because we have
So-
one, maybe two
Yeah.
planes on the lake that take off and land
Yeah.
every, maybe once every 6 months or something, and a helicopter.
Yep. Yeah. So it actually, and we actually got that at the planning commission meeting as well. So definitely a commonly asked question. It's a good question. So what they do, it's actually an average that is based on size of your community and it's connected to SeaTac and our major airports. And so based on size of the community, if we were doing a greenhouse gas inventory with you all, you would have an aviation wedge that would, and that's that kind of regional metric to be like, okay, this is the size of Lake Stevens. And so we're going to calculate based on, averages of number of people in a community and flight travel. So that's how so every community would have an aviation wedge as part of their emissions.
So you're putting in a calculation for how many people within a city use airline travel?
Yes. Yeah. So there are regional averages based on size of a community for aviation as an emission.
But again, how is our comprehensive plan? How do we address that issue though? Reducing
Right.
travel emissions. How do we physically do that?
It's would be part of a greenhouse gas inventory, but it wouldn't necessarily be where we would focus our strategies and actions with a jurisdiction.
Okay.
So yeah, our strategies and actions tend to be more locally based and, within these 5 buckets that I just walked through.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Great. Okay. So just a couple of next step slides, or one next step slide and then a Q&A. So as Melissa mentioned, the month of March and April, really busy hosting a public workshop, some focus groups. There's an online survey that's live right now. And we'll be taking all that, incorporating that along with the equity assessment to then refine the draft list of measures. We're calling the measures, they're the strategies and actions, and then developing that draft plan in May. And this final slide here is, and I know we've been addressing questions along the way, and I don't know how much time I have with you all. Happy to answer any other questions that come up. A few kind of key things. Do any of those draft strategies and associated actions stand out as particularly important? Maybe less important? Is there anything that's missing? What might need to be revised?
Anything?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments that have been shared. I think with the comments that relate to what is reasonably going to impact us and how we can actually do that. What the mayor said really resonated with me because I just read a report this week that Europe electric vehicles are down 47% in 2023. In part, well, I won't get into that, but there's significant challenges with solar and with wind that were thought to be the new thing that was going to replace fossil fuels, and they're realizing that that's not happening. But I'd hate to put things in place, like Councilman Peterson mentioned that, aren't reasonably relevant to our citizens or they're going to disproportionately impact, those of our citizens who, aren't really in a position to go out and buy new appliances or, re-insulate their house or do other things like that. And I would like to see specifically where the sources of it's the greener energy sources and, what the projections are, the capacity, like the mayor mentioned, what the plans are, the timelines for those capacities increasing to allow us to electrify our city and our state.
Anything else? A great presentation. We appreciate looking forward to your work and
great
having you back up on the podium.
Sounds great.
Perfect.
Thank you all so much for having me.
She's tough. She's tough. She took it from us. She like. All right, great. Let's move on to ordinance 1157, amending the Lake Stevens Municipal Code, Title 10, Parks and Recreation. Sarah.
Good evening, council. So we're here to discuss Title 10. We've brought forth ordinance number 1157, as the mayor stated, that would effectively update Amendment 10. As an overview, this is the municipal code that regulates all of parks and recreation on land. It also affects recreation on our lake. And so that does include motorized boat use, water skiing, piers, and so forth. I've listed all of the chapters in the staff report to give you a quick glance at what is included. The most noticeable change that we've made is changing this from the Planning and Community Development Director over to Parks and Recreation now that the department is established. We've updated and added wording throughout the code for clarification. This Title 10 went through all of the park staff, everybody, including field workers and our recreation workers. The police department did review it, as well as legal counsel. Many of the words were updated to help reflect on current park trends, how our parks are actually being used here in Lake Stevens. We've added some words to expand some flexible use of our parks. For instance, we've added the ability to bring in small propane grills and to use pop-up tents no greater than 12 by 12, where in the current code, it says you cannot bring any canopies. So things like that were addressed. Some of the larger updates are really just sections. Most notably, probably in 10.03.170 and 180 is where you'll see just a lot of markup. It's really just clarifying. It was written in very few words and didn't help clarify all of the activities that you really do need permits for here in the city. Another thing that I want to point out is where I put adding 10.03.025 adoption of rules and regulations. We may have to hold off on approving the ordinance tonight, as I realized sitting here and prepping my notes that I believe what we did was mean to update the wording, which was in 10.03.26 and move it into 0.025. But in changing some of those wordings and moving it in structure, we did not then remove 0.260. So it does effectively duplicate the adoptions of rules and regulations by director. And so I'll consult with our Craig, our city attorney, on that one. Other than that, I won't go through this line by line. All of the edits that you see in your packet, which is approximately 50 pages of ordinance, some pages are blank. They're all made in color. So everything black is original, whereas everything blue, green, red, and purple are edits. The colors just meant different people were touching them electronically. I'm happy to go through any specific sections or answer any questions that you have at this time.
All right, here we go. In 10.03.025, I would like you to change the word power to authority.
And what was that number one more time? 10 point.
That's your adoption of rules and regulations by director, all that red. First sentence says the director shall have the power to promulgate and adopt rules and regulations. I think that should say authority.
Thank you.
Connotation of power is kind of a bad thing right now politically. And then I would like to go over a couple of things that were added. Most of this I don't have too much of a problem with, but there are, I mean, I appreciate the portable grills and those kinds of things and the tents. But one that I'm having a hard time with a couple of them. One is under 10.03.180. Subparagraph Delta, no person shall use a metal detector in any city park without your authority. What's that all about?
Currently, the ordinance says nobody shall use them ever. By allowing the authority allows a permit, an application, or a written acceptance saying that you can use them in these specific areas. And when you do, we can then create practical rules, like you can do a divot like you would see at a golf course, but you have to return the land to how it was. versus people who may dig a foot in order to see what they are. So it is normal in Parks and Rec that you either don't allow any metal detectors ever. I can tell you they are currently being used on our parks land. So instead, we say that with permission, and we can change the wording to say without an issued permit if you'd prefer. It allows us to then go ahead and have a process for it.
So what adverse effects are we currently experiencing as a result of the use of metal detectors in our parks?
If you lost a ring yesterday and perhaps somebody went in today with a metal detector, it could be that it was now found by somebody who would keep it as personal property instead of possibly being able to be turned in and redeemed, like if a parks worker was to pick it up. Now, I think everybody has good intent and that they would try to find the owner. I haven't had any complaints. I do not see metal detectors widely being used today. It may be only one or two repetitive individuals. Usually it's in the beach areas, and they do remove trash, which is always a huge bonus. I think it becomes what if then 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 people start using them on a regular basis. And so it is a way just to get it set now in an ordinance.
Is it concern, Sarah, that someone might metal detect, dig a 3-foot hole in the middle of North Grove Park and not fill it back up to get to their, so what is allowing a metal detector, which I think we should, but so is that giving you the opportunity to give some education on proper metal detecting etiquette? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, so we would have a 1-page rule on etiquette and how we expect you to leave the land once you decide to alter the dirt. And then if you find items, perhaps we put a value. If you find items valued over 50, 100, 500, that we request that you report them to Parks Department in case we have a lost request. We could do things like that.
Is that language we could just include in the ordinance versus requiring folks to go through like a permit process or?
The hard thing is you want an ordinance to be law, where you want rules to be able to be a separate understandable document. It's rare, in my opinion, that the average citizen will go and read through all of these ordinance. Versus it's easy to say, you need a permit to metal detect. Our parks workers could approach people with metal detectors and say, hey, we think it's great that you're metal detecting. Here's how you contact the department to get a permit, make sure that you can continue to do this activity. Undecided and undetermined, it could be free, it could be $5 or $10.
I like free.
I like the word too. There's other people who do other stuff and have to pay for it.
I think if the purpose is to educate and to let folks know what the expectations are, I don't know that we want to charge people to educate them.
Sure.
It's just my own personal opinion.
So I guess my concern is I asked the question specifically because I struggle when we try and enact ordinances or require permits when we don't have data that supports that there's a problem. And saying we're trying to get out in front of it, to me, just is not good enough. I mean, we need to have something if we have no issues that are there, it doesn't take much to revise that. And we're talking 1 or 2 people. I don't know that that's good use of staff resources. I mean, we have our director that would be in charge of approving that. I mean, I struggle with that. So I would appreciate more data-driven things that would, help us, make good policy decisions.
The way this reads, it says you can't use a metal detector. It doesn't say you can't dig. It says you can't use a metal detector. So somebody could theoretically use a metal detector, right? And not dig. Right? So shouldn't it be no digging allowed in city parks?
That is another section, I believe, in the ordinance, and I can find the number.
Well, again, the average citizen isn't going to look through for that one sentence in here. So
I am for amending this to not even having anything about metal detectors in here. I think it's ridiculous. nothing, we don't have anything, like you said, Steve, nothing really tells us we're having a problem here. I know there's 2 people that do this regularly on the beaches. They don't cause any problems. Yeah, I just think it's ridiculous to have that in there as a rule.
And on top of that, enforceability,
Yeah.
are we going to ask our park ranger or the police department to say, I want you to check the permit of the individual at Cove Park to make sure that they are, within their permit? I just don't see that as being a good use of our resources.
In order to accomplish what you're proposing here is to basically instruct people on the proper way to do it, of digging in the dirt. It would be incumbent upon us if we saw somebody leaving a 3-foot hole in the park, that we would probably go and talk to them about that. And, having this, that you can't use a metal detector is not going to say that they don't go out there at night, dig a 3-foot hole and walk away. And that's just, it says, basically it's unenforceable. There isn't really there's no reason to have this in here, in my opinion. So we'll let that one go, but I would amend that to take that out. Now let's go down to my next one that is really.
Can I clarify really quick?
Go ahead.
So right now, the current ordinance says you cannot use metal detectors at all. So you want to delete that section, correct? Okay.
Completely out of there. That's what I would like to do. Now, that'd be up to the rest of the council. That I'm 1 of 7, but that's just my way of looking at it. It's not tenable to me.
So we already have a no digging.
Yeah.
So just strike paragraph
Right,
D.
paragraph D is what I would propose. Let's go down a couple paragraphs to 10.03.190. No person shall practice or play games in which objects are projected or airborne, such as, and there's a litany. So there's a person out there violating this right now, kicking a soccer ball around.
I saw it too.
I have stood up there at the fence with the mayor and Russ watching a volleyball game going on, and we're really, really happy that was happening because people were using the park. People are playing Frisbee. I see that discs are not listed in here, but it is a airborne game or object. I mean, polo.
Like archery.
We already have a place in here, but yes, well, I would like to be able to do lawn darts too, but that's me. Polo, is that like horseback polo? We don't let horses in the thing anyway, so we're not gonna have.
No
polo.
horses in park house.
I imagine maybe they were referring to water polo there, although it does not actually have the water in front of it. That is current language, but I agree can be clarified.
We had some kids out here in the swim area playing polo. That would be not water polo. That would be illegal.
So when you continue the sentence, it says except for areas designated for such purpose. And so it gives us the ability to say rule of thumb shouldn't be used except for where it's appropriate. And so I agree, we don't have a big map. We don't have signs everywhere to say it's appropriate here, it's not appropriate there. It's something that we can work on layouts of each of the parks in order to say where is it appropriate. So balls maybe within not 50 feet of this building, for instance. A volleyball can always be used in the grass. Those types of things. We don't want footballs thrown through the actual playgrounds where kids are swinging. But that's the intent of the ordinance, is to allow us to designate where these activities will and will not occur. And then the rules at the department side is where we apply the rules to the field to say, where does that happen at?
So this is not saying that we can't play volleyball in a great lawn here at North Cove Park.
Correct. It's saying that you shall not have games that include airborne or projectiles, except at park areas set apart or designated for such purposes by the director, which is current language.
I might suggest just like flipping that a little bit to
Okay.
say the following games in which objects are projected or airborne are only allowed in areas designated for such purposes or something, rather than saying they're not allowed to start with. Because I think that's what you see first, and then that sort of colors the rest of the.
I think we
Sure.
should still throw baseball on the grass back and forth. I think that's the name of the game. I think you get what we want.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can change it so it comes off as a positive tone instead of starting with the negative tone and
Well,
have it as an affirmation.
I think I would also take out the specific natures and just say projected or airborne objects.
Take out cricket.
Take out polo,
And
because
lacrosse.
apparently we don't know if it's sports polo or water polo or someone's shirt.
If you take out cricket, sure, you can go to play cricket.
Would you like any examples, including golf, baseball, or remove them all?
I feel like games in which objects are projected or airborne, I mean, that to me seems clear.
Well,
don't-
that gets rid of,
I don't know
Get
that-
rid of soccer.
that gets rid of,
Kids can play soccer.
that gets
But no,
rid of.
but
Get rid of baseball.
if the wording is changed that to say these games in which objects are projected or airborne are allowed in designated areas.
Right.
As defined.
By the
I think
by
she
the
gets a
director.
flavor of what we want.
So
Yeah.
that's great, except that we're gonna designate areas. How many signs are we gonna have in our park?
I don't think it needs to be signed. I think it can be the director shows up and if something's unsafe, this is no longer the designated area for that. If someone stokes up
Okay,
a golf ball hitting range at the edge of the water feature, that would be a problem.
But if you're getting them into the lake, that's fine.
But if you're out on the end of the deck,
Two strokes.
So the practical side of this is to create,
Penalty strokes for golf.
all right, we're breaking down now.
so the practical side, we'll just have a list of creating zones where they are and are not as a general list of, not allowed within 50 feet of buildings, not allowed within playgrounds, that sort of thing. So we can also look at specific maps if we need to designate areas. So
All right,
you
so
gotta get that.
perfect. Thank you.
as long as we have a zone for lawn darts, I'm fine.
What else got, Kim?
I'm gonna stop there. I've already taken up way too much time. And actually, I don't think there was very much else in here that really piqued my interest. Those two things were really set out, and then the word power instead of authority. That's all I have.
I agree. with
Thank you.
I think Got the flavor of it. I think we've been working real well so far, so let's keep the good going.
I like the catch in the boat usage. Changing cove to lake. It shows you how long
Mm.
that paragraph has been there and how long ago we were just around the cove and not the whole lake.
What number specifically were you referring to with the cove?
Oh, and 10.36.030 talks about no boat, vessel, watercraft, or houseboat moored in the cove. You haven't been part of the cove in a long time and you caught that and said lake. Good job.
Would council,
We not taking action.
at this, I was just gonna ask,
No,
so
we're
at
not
this
taking
point, do we want to see these revisions made and brought back to a later date or a motion with these amendments?
No, we need to see it.
Yeah.
Like, so I do have, I'm struggling with the negative tone of our codes and things. Like, it's assuming that people are bad, that they're doing terrible things instead of providing some general guidelines. I mean, just the wording, for example, that we use there with the games, the projectiles. And I realize it's not you, Sarah. You inherited this and you made some great changes, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
But generally speaking, just each ordinance I read through and each code is just negative and assumes that our citizens are not capable of making good decisions. And I prefer to have the language that assumes that our citizens are going to make good decisions, but we put guidelines in place to address the few that choose not to do that. But I do want to address, we have specific language in the short-term rental code that spells out, we have 3 paragraphs that specify nuisance activity. And so we have, our code, I mean, if we wanted to, we have 7 pages of short-term rental code. And we have 43 pages of, this parks code. If we were to use the same level of draconian methodology, I mean, do we need to incorporate the language and describe in each ordinance things such as nuisance noises for this? Because our parks, I hear nuisance noises and things that actually violate our noise ordinance. Do we need to put those things in there, or can we, how do we want to address that? Because if we're doing it for short-term rentals, it affects maybe 30 units in the city. Our parks definitely get used and there's these types of activities. I'm wondering what folks' thoughts are on that.
Are you asking just specifically about noise? In the parks?
Nuisance noise, yeah, I mean, just in
Okay.
general, because there's noise from boats on the lake, from their music, there's noise from people's boom boxes and their music they're playing, while they're having the barbecues.
Kids running around spitting squirt guns and yelling and stuff is bad for short-term rentals, but would it be okay for parks?
I can point out that 10.03.250 does talk about amplified music and public address, but nothing about people noise.
Yes, I think overall consistency, I think if we're going down that route of specifying things in that manner, like we have with the short-term rental code, that we should be consistent with other codes such as the Parks Code and other things that are impacting thousands more people than the short-term rental people that are impacted by that.
Or maybe revise the short-term rental code just to roll on under it, see the minutes.
Yeah, we still have an option to do that.
Right.
So-
To me, it would make sense if they both read the same versus, we know when quiet hours are, we know when that is, people should.
We know we have uses code.
Right.
Well, I do have one more thing that I forgot to mention. I don't see anywhere in here. I may have missed it. That'd be great. What about drones?
Does not address drones.
Huh?
This code does not address drone usage in the park.
You mean like a drone
I-
program?
Yeah.
No,
I
no, drones.
Drums or drones?
Flying objects.
Drones.
No, I think it's drones.
We did internally as a Parks Department discuss drones. I originally wanted to include it within our code. Upon further looking into industry, now you do have to have, I believe, an FCC permit in order to fly drones. So anything that would be smaller, like an RC type, could be easily classified as a projectile because it is moving through the air. But anything like the larger drones, they actually have other laws to follow. And since we have never had an issue with like the large ones over our special events or over the lake, it's not something that we as a department had decided to put in here, but is certainly something that we can discuss or add.
Well, the problem that I see is that, and I've seen this several times already, is that the FCC or the FAA rules on drones are well known for those people that are pilots. But the people that have the small ones that don't fall under the FAA rules don't understand what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do with their drones, like flying over people sitting around Northcote Park. They're not allowed to go over people and those kinds of things. So I'm worried about that. And those are going to hurt somebody more than a volleyball. So, those are the kinds of things that I worry about when I see those. I have been downtown and seen drones flying over people all the time. And I actually go up and tell them, you got to get that off of the park because that's the rule by the FAA rules. But we don't have that codified in our ordinances.
We can take some of those higher level rules and create a section for that.
Are we had any drones?
That we did during Aquafest.
I haven't had any complaints come across my desk, but I think that they are a lot more popular with events, especially.
Yeah.
So I would like to see something because, one of the things that really impressed me and the mayor's talked about this is like, we have this amazing park and we got amazing venue. So we have regattas and we have other things, to have drones that can provide live footage for people that can't directly observe those things. I would like something in place, reasonably in place so we can allow for that, because I think that's a huge benefit for our city to have that kind of footage, especially a building like this with the technology we have to allow that type of access. And I think that's the way that we can expand, technology and being the smart city. I think that we're going to have more opportunities to take advantage of the venues that we have in our city.
And I agree with Steve on that. And another point that isn't really here, but on our event permit, there's nothing that talks about permitting drones.
All right, so Sarah's got some good guidance, and so let's we'll table this for now, and let's move to ordinance 1159. Public use of controlled substance, and I think Greg, you're gonna have to take this.
All right, the proposed ordinance that you have is in response to council's direction to enact an ordinance similar to the ordinance that was adopted by the city of Marysville that prohibits the public use of controlled substances, makes it the crime a misdemeanor, and gives the police department an additional tool to be able to deal more effectively with persons who are possessing and using controlled substances within the city limits. We made a few edits to the Marysville ordinance in addition to changing Marysville to Lake City, but we also made clear that persons using marijuana, for instance, in public, that's currently allowed by state law. We can't prohibit that. This ordinance doesn't conflict with that state law, and we added a few definitions to make the intent and application of our particular ordinance more specific and capable of withstanding a court challenge. We put in the July 1 effective date. So if this ordinance is adopted as it's currently set out, it would not take effect until July 1. You will have the opportunity to see what comes out of the legislature by that time. There also is a current challenge to the ordinance that was adopted by the city of Kent, which has provisions similar to this one. So we'll be able to maybe by July see at least the first round of court challenge to this ordinance and see what problems it might present to us if it goes into effect.
Greg, would you be able to elaborate on the general nature of the challenge, the source of the challenge, and what the specifics are that they're challenging?
Yeah, I think that the key challenge is the one that I was concerned with, is that this ordinance, which does not require that law enforcement first refer a person for treatment or assistance on multiple times before they can be cited, is not included in that requirement is not included in this ordinance. Part of the challenge is that this type of ordinance conflicts with the state law that for possession of a controlled substance requires these referrals before a person can be charged with the crime. And of course, the argument is that, well, you can't use it if you don't possess it. So this is really a way to try to get around that ordinance, and it's a conflict with state law. So we'll see how the courts deal with that issue.
So the nuance of that is that we are using instead of
Possessing, that's one step further. It's not just you have it, but you are, yes, you must be actually using, as that term is defined in the ordinance, in a public place here in the city.
You know, if you think about it, you can't walk down our streets drinking a beer. You can't walk down our streets smoking cannabis, but you could walk down our streets smoking black tar heroin.
Plain lawn darts.
Plain lawn darts.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1159, public use of controlled substances.
Second. Okay, I have a motion to pass ordinance 1159, public use of controlled substances. I have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Just clarification, this won't become effective until July 1st, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And so let's say that the state passes legislation that isn't in concert with this. would the plan then be to revisit this after the state passes
Yeah.
there, but before July 1st?
Yes.
So this will come back prior to July 1st. It seems like regardless what the state does, correct?
In practical effect, yes, you'll get something from us recommending that we take some action, or letting you know that nothing came out of the legislature this session that would directly conflict with this ordinance.
So that being the case, why are we adopting something that doesn't take effect until after the state legislature acts?
The reason we're doing this is because some of our legislators asked us to do it. So that they had more information to go into what they're doing coming from the cities.
Support from the cities.
And it's basically showing support for what they're trying to accomplish.
Right, if you look at the last whereas on page 1 of the ordinance, it's the desire of the Lake Stevens City Council and the Lake Stevens Mayor and his administration and the Lake Stevens Chief of Police and his commands that the Washington State Legislature during the current legislative session enact legislation that effectively allows law enforcement officers in the state of Washington to arrest persons intentionally using or possessing dangerous drugs, so on and so on and so forth. So there's a message, you're sending a message to the legislature by passing this ordinance. And I think that was the reason that, at least that I heard,
If enough cities start doing it, everyone will be like, okay, the city's.
So one other scenario question. If this were to go into effect and it were still in opposition of state law, and Lake Stevens Police Department determined that they were going to enact the ordinance and cite someone, what would it wouldn't be prosecuted, right?
Well, what we're going to watch, as I say, we're going to watch the development of the legal challenge to this ordinance, and we'll certainly give it together with our prosecuting attorney, give legal advice to the police department as to whether they should issue any citations under if it goes into effect, or we'll come back to you. It may be a situation that we'll say it's pretty clear that this ordinance is not going to pass muster in the courts, and we're subjecting ourselves to possible civil liability by enforcing the ordinance. So we've instructed the police department not to enforce it, and we may come back to you and say we should repeal it. So
I think the chief mentioned he would use it cautiously.
yes.
If it were to be used at all.
With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Let's move on to the draft agenda for the next meeting.
We do not have a paper draft agenda. There were some technical difficulties, but I can read a draft agenda and have this forwarded out. I have just a bulleted list in front of me. So first we have a Holman Capital presentation by Lance Holman. You might remember at the retreat, we talked about the Transportation Benefit District and capital funding strategies. Lance Holman will be here to speak to that information. We have a presentation by the Historical Society, a comp plan docket public hearing, playground updates by the Park Department, an STR follow-up presentation, and then discussion of just draft agendas in general. The next week will be a special meeting versus a workshop because of my understanding is because of the comp plan docket public hearing on the agenda. And I will have this sent out to the rest of the council.
So what is the nature of the STR?
Follow-up presentation.
What does that, what does that entail? Because my understanding of the planning commission was going to do what they were going to do, and then so I'm not clear on what we would be doing with that.
Do you want to answer that? You want me to?
Sure.
I
So,
missed the agenda planning this week, so I might be a little behind.
so it might be a little bit of a a change to what had been discussed at council. After a review of whatever comments are submitted by the council, we wanted to evaluate if they were changes that could be done just at council or if it warranted going back to the planning commission, with the thought that the product that the planning commission would put forward probably wouldn't look radically different than the one you've already seen.
Okay, well, I would agree with that premise. However, I still think that the planning commission needs to tell us that.
Okay.
I don't think that we should take the ability for them to weigh in away from them just on, we feel that they're going to do this.
Well, in addition, they do have the citizens subcommittee, or whatever you want to call it, subcommittee 2, I guess, recommendation that they need to consider as well. So
Which they have and forwarded to you already.
That was the one that was put together that. And
I think my recollection of the conversation was that the feedback, depending on what the feedback is from council, we have till March 15th, is that right? Tomorrow to get feedback back. And the thought was if the feedback isn't substantive, that it might be quicker to look at that feedback and bring it back here and incorporate that here versus sending it back to the planning commission.
I also recall, though, Community Director Wright saying he didn't want to be the arbitrator of those comments. And that I believe the planning commission would be the arbitrator of those comments. So is that not correct?
To that effect, the conversation with the council had been that there was a desire to not see those comments through any type of a lens and paraphrased, et cetera. So we had agreed to share the comments as written. Anything that I would do would be to provide analysis on the various comments submitted. And
So
paths
wouldn't that
forward.
be appropriate to send that information back to the planning commission to give them some sort of direction or feel as to what the council is thinking?
So I think that's what next week is. Let's look at the comments that were given by the council members and just make a decision within the council. Can we deal with this, or does it have to go back to the planning? Is it too big for us to deal with here in a workshop? Or should we send it back to the planning commission? If it's a couple of small changes, I think we can probably deal with it, right? If it's some big changes, then that's the assessment we need to make. Do we send it back to the planning commission with recommendations? That's what we're looking at for next week.
So if I'm understanding, we're gonna, anyone who wishes to submit comments, and I guess it's helpful, thank you, Gene, or Russ, for sharing that. It's helpful to, in what way to, because I have notes that I've assembled, but I haven't put them in a written format to submit. So I'd like to know the manner in which, it's going to be received. If it's going to the planning commission, that is going to present it differently. If it's going to whoever I don't want them editorialized by someone else.
So they wouldn't be. So the idea is put your comments in for tomorrow. Those will be put into the packet for next week. The council will all get them ahead of time. There will be no editorializing. There'll be no cliff noting. You can get them raw straight off the email. And we can assess them next week to say, you know what, we can deal with this in a workshop, or no, it's too big for us. Let's send it back to planning commission.
Right, and they were to be sent to the city clerk.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, I can live with that.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Go out and do great things in the community. Volunteer with your favorite civic organization. Help your
Something
neighbor.
in the water. Tonight, something was in the water.